Hello everybody, this is Jurassic Adventures back again with another video, and this one is the one we've all been waiting for, including myself. This is the repaint of the Hammond Collection Spinosaurus. If you guys remember, a while ago, probably a few years back, I actually got quite a bit of recognition I actually gained from repainting the Extreme Chomping Spinosaurus, and that was one of my best repaints to date. But you know, I've improved my skills since then, and I think I've actually grown my abilities, and I really want another shot at the Spinosaurus, and so hopefully this one is going to be better than the last one. But I'm very confident, so let's get right into this repaint. If you guys watched any of my other Hammond Collection repaints, you know the deal. First thing we got to do is sand down those joints with the Dremel, and then for the other types of joints like on the neck and the tail, use an X-Acto knife. And then again, if you guys have watched any of my other repaints, you know exactly what's going on here. This is the gray airbrush primer. We're just going to go over the entire body with that, except for the tail. For the tail, I actually use this Angelus sneaker paint. It's meant for shoes, for leather, but it works really good and has a nice flexible sort of properties that make this tail, you know, so it can still bend and everything like that, so that's really vital. And then I forgot to sculpt the scar on the upper left hip of the Spinosaurus. This happens when the airplane scrapes it in the movie, and as you can see there, sculpted in and then primed over that. Now we can go to the fun part, which is slinging some paint. Here I'm taking a little bit of a lighter gray, and I'm just going over the entire underbelly with the airbrush. Usually I do dry brush, but I wanted a more solid effect, and then for the upper part of the body I wanted a little bit more of that scale definition, so I'm actually dry brushing with that same color, using a sort of larger brush. And then with an even lighter gray, I'm just going to go down and I'm going to start painting in the stripe and the other lighter sort of almost white colors. Important thing to note is that even though it looks white on like pictures and stuff like that, it's actually not, and so kind of match the color relative to the body color, and that's how you get it really close to the reference. But otherwise, after that I just kind of went over with that sort of darker warm gray, and then now I'm just doing a ton of color variation all over it. Really standard stuff. I went into it in my last video a lot more, and really just took a long time and like looking at the reference images, so that's why it's not recorded much. And then for this next part, I'm going to take that burnt red orange color and just kind of go alongside the back of the neck and the face. And I am aware that there are white patterns on the face. I'm going to paint those in later. And then just carrying it all the way down the tail with the airbrush, making sure to highlight certain scales and whatnot just to fade it in nice and good. And now I'm just brushing back in those facial patterns. But this is another really important detail where that color theory just comes in. This is more of a medium gray, but it looks super white on the actual face. So it just is relative to the body, it looks that way. Then here I'm taking in some dark brown that I already applied around that white pattern, and I'm just giving the body more color variation, really building up all of those tones around the body to give it a lot more different scale definition and look. And next I'm using a wash, and this is like a reddish brown wash. I'm going over all of these red patches, and I'm, you know, really getting it into the cracks, and what that does is it pulls out that detail. It darkens the cracks, and then it leaves the top a little bit less dark, so you can really see all that scale definition. And then here I am with a kind of burnt orange color transitioning into the sail. I'm just using the airbrush and making sure to get a nice clean fade. Next, with the airbrush, using a very deep brown, I'm going to go in and paint all of those patterns that you see along the sail. It is important in these repaints not to use a total black or white, as it really just makes it so there's too much contrast and it looks very unnatural. But now I'm going in with blue, just right on the inside of those patterns, and I'm going to paint all of those in. I'm going in with like a nice slate blue. It's a little bit desaturated, a little bit gray, but it's also a little bit green. So it's the perfect color. A lot of people I see using too bright of colors, and that makes it like, gives it a little bit of a unnatural feel. And on the animatronic you can see that it's a little bit of a darker blue as well. Then on the inside it actually fades a little bit to a lighter blue. Again, it's another lighter grayish blue, so I'm just painting that in with the airbrush here. This fine tip airbrush is doing a great job of painting in all of those things, all those little details. Now I'm going to take the fine tip brush with a nice and watered down light gray paint that is the same as those stripes, and I'm just going to paint in all the little details between the scales that you see on the animatronic and on the maquette. This took a really long time. It's important to make sure that paint is watered down and thin, so it just flows with that brush. And also making sure that there's not too much paint on the brush is something that's really important. When there's too much paint on the brush, that's when your stuff starts to get a little bit messy, lines start to get a little bit sloppy, and it just kind of bleeds over. And so making sure that the brush is loaded but it's not overloaded is something that is important. But after hours of tedious work, that was finally all done, and then I moved into painting the hands and the feet. I'm dry brushing over the scoots right here with a little bit of a sort of warm gray, and then on the underside of the hands and also the undersides of the feet, I'm going to airbrush this sort of lighter pink color. This is a detail that I just noticed on the animatronic as I examined closer pictures of the feet and also the hands, so it's important to get that detail in there as well. When doing accurate repaints, the sourcing of images and references is super important, so I always make sure to do that for a while, and that's how I ensure to get all of those little details. If you don't take the time, you might not know as much, or you might miss some things, so that's what I always tend to do. And then here I'm just painting in all the claws with a sort of darker gray. Again, I don't think it's black, but it's almost there. With that, I'm going to move in with the fine detail brush and just start painting in tons of little details. I'm painting in some brown a little bit in the cracks of the face scales, just trying to make sure I can get as much detail as possible in the face, because that's the one where people are really going to focus on the most. And then here I'm going to take, for the inside of the mouth, some transparent burnt umber ink, and I'm just going to spray over those jowls. I try not to get any paint on those, as well as the inside of the mouth, just to preserve that pink color. But once applied, this ink is a little bit brown and also a little bit red, and on the animatronic it is more of a pink color inside the mouth. So I'm going to take some of this Angelus pink mixed with a little bit of other colors, and I'm just going to dry brush that over some of the raised portions of the jowls and also the inside of the mouth to give it a little bit more texture and depth, and also make the color more accurate. Now with a fine detail brush and an ivory color, I'm just going to go in and paint all of the teeth. And to keep the separated look between the teeth, I'm making sure that this ivory paint is nice and thin, so it's not going to dry and connect the teeth weirdly. Next, I'm going in with a thinned down yellowish orange type color, and I'm going over the base of the teeth just to kind of fade it nicely and give it this sort of aged, carnivorous look. Packing in as much detail as possible, like this different coloration on the teeth, is how I take my repaints to the next level. Every little detail counts, especially the eyes though, and that's why I make sure to take extra time. Here I'm going in with the lime green over the light gray already painted on there. The light gray just serves as a nice undertone for that green to really pop. Off camera, I really got in there with the fine detail brush and painted all sorts of little details that are in darker colors and then lighter colors on the eye in various different green and brown tones. Now what I'm doing is painting in that slit pupil. Painting fine details like this all really comes down to the brush load, and the thinness of the paint. You want the paint to be flowy enough that it'll come down really nicely with the brush stroke, but also you don't want too much paint on there, otherwise you're not going to get a precise line. Now what I'm doing is just adding the tiny little white dots with the brush as well, and those are just the little light catches for the eye. And then to round this whole repaint off, I'm just going to go in with a nice fleshy pink tone and go through the entire scar and just paint that. I want to stress again that I was not always good at repainting, and really I got here through consistent effort and learning and a lot of trial and error. I learn new things every single time I paint, and I really just hope to be able to assist you when you're doing your repaints. Here I'm adding a little bit of effects paint. This is a Blood for the Blood guy by Citadel. It just gives it a really nice bloody look inside of that scar. And then here I am taking a little bit of gloss varnish, and I'm doing the eyes as well as the claws and the nose and the inside of the mouth. As always guys, I hope you enjoyed this repaint video. I hope I could teach you something about my technique, about my process, and just overall how I do repaints, and how you could maybe apply some of these things into your own work. And that's enough of me talking. I'll let it go into the glamour shots as well as the toy recreation of the epic T-Rex vs Spinosaurus fight. Leave a comment and tell me how you think I did. But as always guys, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. This is Jurassic Adventures, and I will see you in the next video.